Welcome back to Hoops HD, the Hoops HD report, everybody.
Woohoo!
David's excited. I'm excited. Everyone's excited. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood, joined by a full cast of, or almost everybody that we've got here from Hoops HD on this evening. First of all, Rocco Miller back with us. You can check him out at bracketeer.org as well. We got John Stalika on the other side up top here. Directly below me, our selection committee guessing expert, John Teitel. We got Matt Sikowski down there, the bottom row, and for some reason, even though he got thrown off last week, he's back again this week, David Griggs as well.
It's just been a sensational night. Tonight is the reason we do what we do. If you're not watching us, I don't know what the hell you are watching. There's nothing on television worth watching right now. Literally nothing.
Yeah, we are here. This is Monday, December 11th. It is finals week, which means that we've got thrilling games like Northwestern, Chicago State. Is Chicago State down by 100 points yet?
I don't know. They really should have. It would have been better had the halftime score was 55-8. Now, at that point, just send Chicago State home, pick a couple guys out of the stands, and play against them.
Are we sure this is Chicago State and not a branch campus of Toccoa Falls?
No, I'm not entirely sure that it's not Toccoa Falls.
Chicago State, Toccoa Falls, yes.
Yeah.
Today what we want to do is we're going to pull up this on the screen here, the screen share, the standings in the various conferences. We're going to go through them, and here they come up on the screen. Hopefully everybody can see them. Hopefully I get a yes there from someone.
So yes, we can see.
Okay. And I want to start in the ACC because we've got something amazing here. The last place team happens to be the number 4 team in the nation. Team, have you ever seen that before?
Probably, but not that I recall. This was going to be my final thought, but I'll have to come up with another final thought. John Stalika did his bracket projections today, and I would like to thank him for not doing what so many other idiots do, and that's project Boston College as the first place team. I get the thought process. I just entirely disagree with it. When first of all, they're tied with 13 other teams in the loss column, or 12, however many it is. And secondly, when you're projecting the automatic bid, I think you need to go with the best profile, not so much just who's in first at the moment. Just my opinion on that. Good job, John. But putting this into perspective, it was Duke's first true road game of the year. They'd had some incredible wins on neutral sites, or so it looked. But, with Florida having the rough time since that week, was that win, while still good, was it as good as we thought? And the other thing is BC a little bit better than we thought. Sitting at 7-3.
I'm going to add to what the puppet said here. Our good friend Jerry Palm is one of the people that's more likely to put in BC in a bracket projection just because they are on top of the conference. But at the same time, when said team is also losing on the road to Nebraska, I'm just going to move on and look for more worthy teams.
Well, that's not a bad loss. I mean, that's actually not a bad loss at all.
Well, let's go a little more into some of these games here. And Tata, let me start with you on the big upset, the Boston College over Duke. Is this a sign, do you think, that Duke is just so young they're not quite ready, that Boston College may actually make a little noise, or just one of those games?
Yes, I think you nailed it actually with your. No, I mean, Duke is young, but I still think they should beat BC in Boston or Cameron or anywhere they play. It helped that Kai Bowman had the game of his life and that Jerome Robinson helped. BC is a good team. I'm not ready to put them in the tourney just yet. Obviously, this is a huge resume-defining win. Yeah, I mean, I still think Duke is capable of winning the title, even though they couldn't win in BC. They're young, but they've got months to go before it really counts.
And Rocco, some of the other games we saw, all the games for last week are highlighted there. Some of the games are highlighted in red, though. You can see, for example, Syracuse with a nice win over UConn in the Jimmy V last week, and West Virginia, the win over Virginia. But anything you took out of any of those games or any of these teams there's 8 teams now or 7 teams, I guess, with either 0 or 1 losses. No, it is 8 if you include Duke, 8 teams.
Yeah, I thought Syracuse's win over UConn. I mean, watching the game, UConn is just they're not a tournament team. So it's it's Syracuse did a good job to make sure they got out of there with the win. I thought West Virginia's game against Virginia was a really good test against a red hot Virginia team, and they were able to take care of home court, get the W. Going back to the Boston College game, I think Boston College's backcourt is unbelievable, and they can shoot the lights out. I mean, between Bowman, Cheatham, and Robinson, they made 13 threes. And as a team, they shot 15 for 26 from deep. So if they do that, they can beat a Duke at home, and they'll be tough to beat at home. I think they'll struggle on the road. So yeah, for them to even be close to the bubble would be a great year for them. And I'm really interested. And I think the mystery team still is Clemson in this conference.
Yeah, I mean, and most amazing probably about that BC game is right before the game, Deontay Hawkins found out that due to a knee injury, he's out for the season. He didn't even play in that game, and yet they still beat Duke. Right. Matt, the other game, it goes back to last Tuesday, but really notable, with Notre Dame losing at home to Ball State. I still haven't figured that one out yet. Have you? Do we have you there, Matt?
Solid take. Matt is stumped. Matt doesn't know what to say.
Well, we're trying to get Matt back. David, let me throw that question over to you.
I think it was just one of those, just kind of a game where they stubbed their toes. I think it's more bruising than it is crippling. They certainly have a good profile outside of that game. I think it's something that they'll absorb, and it just kind of fades into the background. And then January, February, we're not even thinking about it anymore. For Ball State, it was a nice program-defining checkpoint for a team that has been utterly abysmal as recently as 4 or 5 years ago and done a lot to improve itself. A real feel-good win for them. But as far as Notre Dame, I think it hurt their feelings more than anything else. It's just there's so much good there and there's so much potential there that it's not going to really be much of an anchor at their profile once they're done at the end of the year. They can't afford too many of those, but I don't think they're going to have too many of those. So I think it's fine.
Well, Matt, let me ask you, I think we've got Matt back now. And let me ask you another question about kind of the bottom of the ACC here. And we thought that Pitt would be the team dragging down the league. But if you look at some of these metrics that are up there, including especially these resume-based metrics, we just have the KPI out starting today for the first time this season. It's another team that went and lost at Wofford this week that's dragging down this league, isn't it?
Yeah, I was not high on Georgia Tech last year, this year, whatever. But man, like I didn't think they were this bad. Like the Josh Passenger effect is really taking hold here in year 2.
Yeah, I don't know what happened last year. There was just a fluke, wasn't it?
There is one rather glaring loss on that profile.
Yeah, we know what that is.
Yeah, compared to Notre Dame losing at home to Ball State, losing at home to Grambling is an anchor. Like they might need to win at Cameron 3 or 4 times this year to wipe that one off.
Yeah, but they followed it up with Wofford too. Sorry, Rocco, go ahead.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Georgia Tech is they've experienced, of course, suspensions and injuries, and they've got 4 losses, but none of them are by more than 7. So every one of their losses were close losses. So clearly they're struggling down the stretch. But I think, you can't close the door on them yet. They might be able to figure some things out if they get a full roster back.
And Stalika, we've got a real nothing during the week this week, really, in most of these leagues, have a real interesting weekday coming up or a weekend coming up here in the ACC with I've got the upcoming schedule there, and I've highlighted a ton of games that are really intriguing coming up in the ACC. Is there one that really stands out to you?
I can only conclude that Boston College is the only team not taking final exams this week, but I seem to be noticing another trend as far as GW goes with Maryland no longer in the ACC. It seems like George Washington is starting to become everyone's favorite trip when it comes to DC. Virginia found out the hard way that it is possible to lose at Foggy Bottom, so I would be on upset alert if I were Miami here. But also watch out for Clemson in Florida because the Tigers have also been sneaky good so far this year. We'll see how much for real they'll be against the Gators.
Yeah, Titel, that's an interesting one, but I'm kind of circling this Sunday game, North Carolina at Tennessee, which is not a game I thought I was going to circle heading into this season.
True. I can tell you that Hoops HD will be live at the Charles E. Smith Center for the Miami GW game, thanks to some fantastic press passes coming my way.
Are you sure that's not Hoops MD?
We'll see what the impact says. Bravo. Tennessee's been amazing. Their only loss is to number 1 Villanova. They've beaten Purdue. They've beaten Georgia Tech, and then a bunch of cupcakes. They're really good. I don't think they're a great team. They're very young. Top 4 scorers are all sophomores and juniors. So they had the big transfer, James Daniel from Howard, also in D.C., who is supposed to be great and has been below average, but he's 6 foot tall and playing in a major conference, so I get that. I think next year Tennessee makes the leap. Obviously, if they can beat the Heels, maybe this is the leap, but I think they're a year away.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and turn over to the Big East now. And Matt, if I could bring you back in here, hopefully we've still got your speakers working. Your Marquette team had a pretty nice week. Not only the win over Vermont, but even after that, the huge win on the road at Wisconsin.
Yeah, I called last week. There was a huge week for Marquette in their hopes of making the tournament. And last week was, I think, the first time all year they looked like a tournament team. And really, I think the Vermont game, well executed on both sides. That was a fun game to watch. They just dismantled Wisconsin. That might not even been as close as the final scores. If not for some foul trouble with Rousey and Howard during the game, that might have been a 25, 30-point final score.
It wasn't as close as they just went into the. I mean, they just blew them out, and you got all the credit in the world to Marquette for that. I mean, that one had to feel good, but just how bad is this Wisconsin team? Good grief! They're another team that typically doesn't lose at home. But boy, they didn't mess around losing that one.
They were a young roster to begin with, but with 2 of their guards now injured, that certainly did not help against Marquette, but take nothing away from the Golden Eagles in that one.
Yeah, and Rocco, we would be remiss by not having a little discussion about the number 1 team in the nation. Most of the metrics have them number 1 overall, KPI 3. That's probably RPI is at 6 right now, but Villanova just really played, incredible game against Gonzaga. We thought started looking like a pretty good Gonzaga team. Followed it up with a Big 5 rivalry win on Sunday over LaSalle as well.
Yeah, Villanova looks really good to me, and we'll get into this later in the show. But out of the unbeatens, I think they're going to be enjoying it perhaps the longest. So we'll talk about that a little later. The LaSalle game surprised me. I think with about 8 minutes left, it was a 2-point game or maybe even a tie game. So I don't know if they were looking ahead a little bit to a week off or what happened there. But another game I'd like to point out is the St. John's Arizona State game. I don't know if you guys got a chance to watch that. I watched the entire game. It was a seesaw battle. St. John's was playing without Levette and got into foul trouble, and that ended up being the difference. It was a 1-point game, I believe, with about 4 minutes left. And
yeah.
They really stopped Arizona State from getting out on transition and running and getting their wide open 3-point shots that they were able to do against Kansas and Xavier. So look for teams down the road against Arizona State when we talk about the Pac-12 to take that as a blueprint on how to slow down the Sun Devils. And St. John's looks a lot better than I expected this year.
I concur, Rocco, and I'm glad you said that because I was going to, if Chad didn't get around to it, ask the rest of the panel what they thought of the Johnnies. I know it's ironic to say this, but I was so impressed with them in that game, even though they ended up losing it. I don't know their profile off the top of my head other than their record. I don't know if there's any real notable wins on it yet. But I think that this is a team that, at least on their home court, is going to get some scalps in this conference. And it wouldn't surprise me if they ended up inside the bubble. I was not big on the hiring of Mullen, not that I had anything against him. It's just that he was so unproven. And the product they're putting out there this year, and as you said, without a key player to go against Arizona State and still play that well, I was impressed, really impressed with the Johnnies.
Yeah, so far they just got the UCF and Nebraska wins for your boys. But the only losses are ASU and Mizzou, so they're fine so far profile-wise. And I think if they get everybody healthy by the time they start conference, they're in pretty good shape if they just keep pacing.
Yeah, I might throw out. I think they might actually be a better balanced team with not having both Pods and Levent in the backcourt because they're such similar players, and I like them both individually, but like I think it might be better balanced when you go with Pods and Simon or even Levent and Simon, and then play a little more not traditional front line, but you get a little bigger and I think a little more balanced. Yeah.
Tytel, let me ask you about one other team here. It's not going to be the team that is rolling its way through the MEAC, not the Georgetown Hoyas, but instead the Providence, who was a team we kind of liked a lot heading into the season, lost to Rhode Island last week, barely escaped Brown, and then loses a game at UMass over the weekend. Time to be concerned for the Friars?
Yeah, I think there's some great concern that they are not going anywhere near the NCAA tournament. I like the fact that they have senior leadership. I'd like them to have a little more size. It seems like their best players are only 6'7", 6'8", which will certainly get it done in non-conference play. Not sure how it will work in the Big East. When your best win is BC, ironically, I think you have room for improvement. And if you're only beating Brown in overtime this year, you're not going very far, I don't think.
Yeah, and David, I'm going to pull up the upcoming games here again. The only midweek game of note is the Villanova-Temple game, which is a Big Five rivalry, good one.
Yeah,
coming up weekend,
at
actually,
Temple,
that's probably the best game of the week. Actually, go ahead.
Yeah, at Temple. Temple has some good stuff on their profile. I think they're swinging a little bit over their heads in this one, but it is that rivalry game. They are at home, and it's a good showcase for them. I'm just curious to see what they can do. Nova has not just been dominating the Big Five. They've been blasting their way through it. Ironically, it seems like the team that typically gives them the most trouble in the Big Five on a yearly basis is LaSalle. Everybody else, they just did completely dismantle. But it'll be fun to watch them, not at the Palestra, but at Temple. So is it really a Big Five game? I need to ask you that. With the Palestra becoming less and less of the site, is it truly the Big Five? Well, they don't play it there. I mean that in praise for the Palestra. Like, shouldn't this game be at the Palestra?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Is it less of a Big Five game since it's not?
What? I don't think it's less of a Big Five game, though. It is a Big Five game. But a couple other games coming up, rivalry games. Seton Hall at Rutgers, road test against a game Rutgers team, in my opinion, at least. They gave Michigan State a heck of a run. And Butler-Purdue as part of the Crossroads Classic is another one that I think we can circle coming up this weekend as well. Yeah. But I guess let me move over to the let's go over to the Big Ten, where we're just going final right now. It's not even going to be on the screen yet. Minnesota just barely escaped Drake by 1 point tonight. There's another team, David, after Minnesota got outscored playing 5-on-3. They have been struggling mightily.
Yes, they have. And this was a team that I really, really liked even after that game. I just thought that it was such a bizarre circumstance that they didn't know what to do. But they have not looked good at all. And then the game that really impressed me, their win at Providence, suddenly that isn't quite as impressive because Brown also almost won at Providence. So maybe the mini not as good as we thought. Again, a team that was snubbed by the voters again this week, and I can't believe it, in a team that basically beat Minnesota, and I can understand the residual effect is this Nebraska Cornhusker team that I just don't understand why the voters are – what the
hell? Rocco, let's talk seriously, though, about the top of this conference. And Michigan State up to number 2 in the nation. Another solid week this week, despite that struggle a little bit at Rutgers. They did end up winning the game by 10. Is this team the second best team in the nation, in your opinion, for what you've seen so far?
Yes, definitely. I mean, the only loss is that Duke game when Grayson Allen had a All-American type performance, put the team on his back and carried the young guys. So I can certainly excuse them for that loss. Then they dismantled Notre Dame at home in what was supposed to be a top 5 matchup. They dismantled North Carolina in their PK 80 bracket. And so they're trending well. And I think a couple of us in the preseason show had them being the national champions. I'm not going to remove that opinion at this point. They deserve it. and they've got a bunch of cakewalks coming up before they play Maryland in about 3 weeks.
Right.
So
And Matt, I guess the concern with the Big Ten is you see Michigan State number 2 of the nation, Purdue a solid team there, number 17 in the nation. And Matt Painter, as a side note, there became I think the 15th fastest coach to ever reach 300 wins when he picked up his 300th win over the weekend. But there's no one else ranked, and the only team that even got votes was Minnesota.
Yeah, like that's not gonna be that many tournaments. Like I don't see a whole lot of tournament teams in that grouping.
Yeah,
maybe 4 or 5. I mean, I think Minnesota's a tournament team, but I'm not saying anything more than that. And then after, geez, maybe Maryland, maybe Michigan, maybe Ohio State, maybe Penn State.
I was going to ask, I think Ohio State will continue to improve, and I don't know if they'll have the resume for it, but by the end of the year, I think they'll be playing like a tournament team. And they haven't been perfect, but I still like this Penn State team. I'm kind of surprised at how good they are when compared to what they've looked like in previous years.
Well, that Penn State team has a lot of talent. They should be good.
But they lost to Wisconsin.
Lamar Stevens,
they did.
Reed, Watkins, the big guy. Yeah, these were guys other high major teams really wanted. I mean, Carr and Stevens were top 100 recruits. So were highly wanted. So they should especially this year, the Big Ten. They should be in the top 4 or 5 that you'll probably need to be to get a tournament bid.
Right. Yeah, and one thing I'm noticing about this conference is there's 2 teams that weren't expected to do much this year, and they're the last couple of weeks they've already shown a lot of signs of improvement. Ohio State, of course, is one of them. There's 2-0 in the league. The other one is Illinois. I watched them against UNLV late the other night, and they were neck and neck with UNLV, and they've improved every game. And they have obviously Coach Underwood is a tremendous coach and can turn them around in a year. I wouldn't be surprised to see those 2 teams make some noise in the Big Ten tournament, and maybe one of them sneak in with a bid with a really good Big Ten season.
Right. And Stalika, this Wisconsin team, I got ripped apart for not having them in my preseason bracket. Are you all now coming on board?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was falling asleep here because I noticed there are 2 teams in the bottom 10 in the country in terms of tempo. Wisconsin, we kind of expect them to put us to sleep during games, but I wouldn't say the same thing about Michigan here.
Yeah, we have Big Ten basketball, though. This is
Virginia is not in this conference. Sorry, Joby.
Yeah.
But Sleek, let me stick with you and show you the upcoming schedule here and ask you if there's anything that you're really looking forward to. Obviously, we mentioned already that Purdue's going to be going against Butler in the Crossroads Classic. But what else do you see coming up this week?
This is a loaded question with a certain team going to Ohio State, but let's move on and go down to Kansas and Nebraska. But we can also mention the other half of the Crossroads Classic, and that's going to be Indiana going against Notre Dame, where the Irish should win back-to-back games in the Crossroads Classic, I think for the first time, if I'm not mistaken.
Possibly.
David?
Yeah, this is Kansas's one true road game of the year, and I think it has a corporate sponsor, which that's a topic for another night, how these high major conferences
one true non-conference road game. Non-conference.
Yeah,
they're going to play.
Is that what I said?
Conference, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, does the Big 12 make them play half their road games? I mean, that's just not fair.
It probably isn't. I also noted that Western Kentucky-Wisconsin game for Western Kentucky, not for Wisconsin. The reverse of what we thought this is going to get to this season for that game.
Yeah, bad loss for Western Kentucky yesterday, but anyway.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that during our Under the Radar podcast coming up in a few days here. But
in fact, I think I would also be remiss if I didn't mention one more non-conference game in the Big Ten, and that's going to be a D3 Catholic going to Maryland.
Why would you be remiss for not mentioning?
I think they can probably walk there, can't they?
Yes.
What train do you take to get from Catholic to College Park?
I assure you, all trains to College Park are the Green Line, and if you don't catch the shuttle early, you will miss the last train back to downtown DC.
Okay. got the Big 12 standings up here. We're going to get to that last game on the list here in a second. But let's talk besides that last game. Matt, was there any other games that really stood out? Well, I guess besides what Kansas, definitely going to get to Kansas in a second.
Yeah, I'll definitely mention the TCU Nevada. That now I did not watch live, but we got on the DVR and then having to watch the first half of the game on Watch ESPN because of the volleyball game running so late.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was actually a really good game. I like both those teams, but yeah, Jamie Dixon's built up the real nice quickly at TCU with a couple of Trent Johnson leftovers. But no, I really like Fisher, the point guard, Kenrich Williams, Brodzianski, the big. They've got a little bit of everything. And the way Kansas looked this week, it wouldn't stun me. Maybe they'd be hilarious if TCU is the one that ends the streak.
Yes.
Yeah, and David, we also saw Oklahoma pick up that nice win against USC. Now after 7-1 start now for the Sooners.
Yeah, much improved from last season. Just another really good coaching job. I'm big on the Sooners this year. Another real surprise team, at least for me, that also got a big win earlier in the week against, I think it was Nevada, is Texas Tech. And I know that they were at home, but this was a team that I didn't think would be anywhere near the bubble. But here they are with a couple of big wins already, sitting there at 7-1. Yeah. And I think that they're going to get some scalps at home, and if they can pick up a couple road wins in conference play, they could be dancing. Once again, this conference is on pace for I don't know how many years in a row to put more than half of the league in the tournament, and that is remarkable.
More than half. I'd say you've got 8 teams that would make a case for the tournament right now out of this conference.
Right. Now, I think eventually one of those – yeah.
It would have been 9 if not for Kansas State laying an egg against Tulsa.
Right.
Yeah, well, which disqualifies them.
I think Iowa State's loss to Milwaukee is fairly disqualifying.
That could be there too. Yeah, lose to a very bad Milwaukee team. But let's go to Kansas, though. We definitely got to discuss them. And Rocco, let me start with you because you are a Washington alum. And how about that game Wednesday night?
Oh, it's fantastic. I couldn't believe my eyes. I was in shock the next morning. But Coach Hopkins had a really good game plan to make sure that the Jayhawks didn't get out in transition. They let Vic, their big dunker, big scorer for Kansas, do kind of whatever he wanted in the lane, just not get the ball down low to the big. So I think they only had one dunk the entire game. It was a very unique game plan, very Syracuse-like, and it just all worked to perfection. And then the whole city got excited, and then of course last night they got destroyed by Gonzaga. So everybody's back down to earth now, but that was a great blueprint to slowing down Kansas. So that's what I saw in that game. And then just to touch on what you guys were saying with Texas Tech and TCU, TCU has been very impressive. I got to see the Nevada game. I also got to see Nevada Texas Tech. The difference is Nevada totally handed Texas Tech that game with some help from the referees. And Texas Tech's a very, very tough team to beat in Lubbock, and that's going to be the case all year. It's been the case the last couple of years. So I don't know if Texas Tech can do it on the road still. That was their big question mark last year. And then TCU still has not played a true road game this year either. So I'm going to reserve my full judgment until they do something big on the road. But that was a big win over Nevada in LA.
Well, Titel, I want to go to you here. I'm going to pull up a different screen list on the board here. And let's talk about the Arizona State-Kansas game. And I know you wanted to discuss this.
So courtesy of our good friends at KenPom.com, this shows you how the game progressed. First half was all Kansas, and the first 5 minutes, the Jayhawks up 15-2. This was over. They were stepping on their throats. It was done. And then all of a sudden, Bobby Hurley releases his trio of 6'1 guards, Trey Holder, Shannon Evans, and the Cognac Kid, Remy Martin, who combined for 72 points. They made 11 threes, 14 assists, 7 steals. Kansas bench did nothing. 1 point, no assists, no steals. Second half was all Sun Devils, as you can see by the graph. 58 second half points. This was against a Kansas team with a Hall of Fame coach in Bill Self, who was 224-10 at home. Repeat, 224-10, now 224-11.
Yeah, I mean, this game just completely shocked me. Stalika, Yeah, is this time? Do we have a little bit of concern now for Kansas with back-to-back losses, both in state at least, even though the other game was not in Lawrence, it was in.
It was not in state. It was in the state of Missouri.
It was in the state of Missouri.
The home state of the team that they should be playing in that city every year.
Both on courts with the Jayhawk logo in the center of the court. Let's put it that way.
There you go. Yeah.
We'll get into this when we get to the Pac-12, but I would be a lot more alarmed if they were losing to a team in the Bay Area as opposed to Arizona State and Washington, who have been impressive in spurts this year.
Yeah, but I mean, it depends on what you mean by concerned. Concern for a 1 or a 2 seed, probably. Concern for a protected seed, probably not. But we're used to seeing Kansas on the 2 line or better. In fact, it's been a minute since they haven't gotten at least a 2 seed, even in the years where they've faded out early in the tournament. But I don't know. I still think they're going to end up easily a protected seed, and maybe. I mean, the door's still open because of how strong their league is to end up on the 2 line or maybe even the 1 line. I mean, it could have just been a bad week.
You have to go back to 2014, which was the last time the Jayhawks actually lost a non-conference game at Allen Fieldhouse, and that was to a ranked San Diego State team that did make the Sweet 16 that year.
And if I'm not mistaken, that was the only game they lost at home until Iowa State beat them at home last year. This is not a team that loses often at home, as Titel pointed out.
Well, Matt, here's the upcoming schedule for the week, and kind of a weak week for the Big 12, although interesting week for Texas. A pair of home games, but against Michigan and Louisiana Tech, who may give them both would be solid wins, I think.
Yeah, now they're going to have to play them without star guard Andrew Jones, who has a hairline fracture in his wrist that he just broke today. So the news broke today. I think the wrist unfortunately happened last week of the VCU game. But, yeah, now because they're kind of thin in the backcourt, so maybe that cost them one of these games. And I think it's a game Michigan could desperately use still.
Right.
Probably more than Texas.
Also, kind of circle that Northern Iowa State game for the road team, though, not for the home team, right, David?
Right, yeah. I don't know if I don't know that is. I think that's the Big Four on a neutral floor.
Yes, because Iowa and Drake play in the other half of that doubleheader.
Right, and Iowa did not beat a Big 10 team tonight. I bet they do this weekend. Iowa is crap.
Well, Rocco, let me bring you up here. I've got the Pac-12 standings on the screen now. We've already discussed a few of these games, most notably the Washington-Kansas game. But you see the rest of the scores there. Was there anything else that you saw this week in the Pac-12 that really surprised you one way or the other?
Well, the results-wise, not too much, except for Cal winning at San Diego State after getting dismantled by Central Arkansas. So the 2 results by Cal are impossible to explain unless we're just going to throw San Diego State under the bus, which, they have enough going for them where we can't. But San Diego State's interesting. We'll probably get to the Mountain West later. They're 0-3 against this league, and 2 of the losses are to Cal and Wazoo.
And not a good start for San Diego State.
Right.
And then the other surprising thing was not necessarily the final score, but it was the way it ended with Michigan and UCLA. UCLA had a 15-point lead with, I want to say, less than 10 minutes left just to be safe. And it looked like they were cruising to a nice big win in Ann Arbor. And they actually had a 3-point lead, I think, with 18 seconds left, when the point guard just dribbled it right off his leg to a Michigan guy for a wide open dunk. All of a sudden they're up by 1, all hell breaks loose. Michigan gets it to OT, and then UCLA doesn't even show up for overtime. And I think the oddest part was they were only down by 9, and there was still about 45 seconds left. And almost every game you watched, the coaches continue to foul. Steve Alford just said, "Screw it, let's get out of here," and they didn't even foul. So that was an odd ending to the game, and UCLA definitely blew a big chance there.
All right. Well, and Titel, I'm going to go to you here for they say that there's only 7 undefeated teams in the country, though. There is another team that is undefeated within the United States, and that's your Arizona Wildcats. Unbelievable for them with the A&M and the Alabama wins. making up yet for that 8th place finish out in the Bahamas?
It is. I mean, we'll see what the committee has to say in a few months, but I think it really helps. A&M was a top 10 team. We only beat them by 3. Very tight game. Neither team led by more than 6 the whole way. Trier had a terrible game, 2 of 7 from the field. But we got a ton of fouls and took advantage, 24-10 advantage at the foul line. And then Saturday against Alabama, the battle of the Super Frosh. Colin Sexton with 30 points, 15 of 16 of the line before fouling out. Thank God he did. We could not stop him inside, outside, anywhere. DeAndre Ayton was a savior, 29 points, 18 rebounds, played like a first overall pick. Sorry, Marvin Bagley. And, of course, the return, not a moment too soon, of Raleigh Alkins. It's not like he came out and had a double-double, but just having him on the court, seeing him be active, it's going to take some time to get the rust off and for the foot to feel 100%. But it was so nice to see him out there, and I don't think it's a coincidence that we beat 2 good teams back-to-back with him coming back for game number 2.
I think both those wins are huge for Arizona. Again, I don't know if we're going to see them on the one line. We probably won't. But this is a huge both on and off paper, I think for their mental health to go out there and beat 2 ranked teams. And honestly, in the case of Alabama and maybe even A&M, 2 teams that are probably better than their ranking and will end up ranked higher than where they are now. I just think that this was a very good week for Arizona and a really important one for many reasons.
Yeah. Here is the I would know it's kind of interesting. Arizona State. The first time they meet is going to be December 30th with none of the kids on campus. A little disappointing that they actually have the one of the rivalry games during the Christmas break. But that's just a side note here when we get into conference.
Right.
Yeah.
Make a call.
Yeah, especially in Tucson. I mean, if it was in Phoenix, you'd still get a big crowd, but in Tucson, it's tougher.
Oh, man.
Yeah, well, and don't they alternate because the way the Big 12 or the Pac-12 works, like there's always 2 of the travel partners play every weekend, and when that first weekend, you're always going to get stuck with one rivalry game before the kids are back in school. You kind of hate that they format it that way, really.
It's a shame that, especially that it's that one this year. But
yeah, I know.
Here's the upcoming schedule, and huge rivalry game coming up Saturday night. Not really to do much with 2 great teams, but a few other games, including Vandy, Arizona State.
Vandy, Arizona, is that the huge rivalry game you spoke of?
No.
No. It's
up there. Utah, BYU, David. It's back.
Yeah. Back after a year hiatus.
It'll be tough.
I always say there's every rivalry is big. Every rivalry is bitter. I think 4 are exceptionally bitter, and this is one of the 4. One of the 4 is dormant now because Kansas and Mizzou don't play. Another one, West Virginia, Pitt. We didn't talk about that because it was so unimportant. There was no reason to. And Louisville, Kentucky being the other exceptionally heated rival. But this BYU-Utah game is pretty nuts. If you think that your school's rivalry is the biggest one, it's not. Yeah, this one's bigger. At least in terms of pure hatred. Would you all agree with that? I don't. It's not that important on paper, but off paper, I don't think there's very many fans that hate each other as much as these 2 do.
It's a big one. It's a big one. Yeah, and they get it'll be a rowdy atmosphere. That's a really, really tough game for Utah to get a win at, because even if BYU is not a tournament team or even an NIT team this year, that will be treated like their Super Bowl. So
right.
That's going to be a tough game for them. Also, Cincinnati at UCLA, I think UCLA is, especially after what happened in Michigan, they need to get that home win and get a decent win on their resume and put that in the bank.
Yeah. But I think to get back to the Holy War, I don't think we need – for the Holy War, we don't need to worry about Dave Rose or Larry Kristowiak calling some of the opposing players MFs and wanting to them.
No, but the fans might. This game has had numerous incidents, like year after year, on the court and in the stands, and it's just kind of a circus. And I don't think ending the rivalry was the right decision. I absolutely am glad that it's resumed, but maybe they could do something to curb some of the shenanigans. So, I mean, this one's you just have players getting punched and Remember Marshall Henderson when he played for Utah had a big incident at one of the games. It's a circus. It is pure hatred, and there is going to be a lot of venom in that building. It's going to be great.
It's going to be a fun one Saturday, but let's move over to this SEC. Matt, let me bring you back in here on the SEC, where we did see A&M suffer that first loss. And we do have an undefeated team left, though, here with a thrilling week this week with a huge win over North Georgia, and that's Ben Howland's team.
Yeah, and I'm anxious to see what they would actually do against real competition, and I guess the SOS at 218. Now that makes Georgetown makes that look strong, but it's still I want to see them against a good team here.
Georgetown is not strong.
No. Well, that's
Mississippi State already had to squeak out 3 home games.
The strong schedule on the Georgetown scale, but still, this is not anything of note yet. And I think once they start playing real teams that will quickly become about an 8-6.
Yep.
Yeah,
there's already been.
Go ahead, Marco.
Oh, sorry. There's already been warning signs for Mississippi State when they played Dayton, Jacksonville State, and when they played Stephen F. Austin. They were down late in all 3 of those. They were all on their home court, but they pulled them out. So I don't know. There's been enough impressive teams in the SEC for me to, from what I've seen in those 3 Mississippi State performances, to believe that they're probably on the bottom half of the league still, even though their record puts them at the top right now.
Yeah, and Titel, let's talk a little bit about this Florida Gators team, who, after a loss last Monday night to Florida State, lose at home to Loyola Chicago, then the bounce back win over the weekend over Cincinnati, though. What do you take out of any of that?
I can't figure out this team. I really thought they were going to be legit. They didn't have a single player in double digits against the Ramblers, and they shot 2 of 19 from the three-point arc. If there's anything I know about Florida, that they make a lot of threes. This didn't happen, although P.S. Loyola, Illinois, they're not an at-large team, but they have a very nice resume. It's weird. 9-1, the only loss by 34 points at Boise. And as far as Saturday, I'll defer to John S., but the Bearcats just couldn't get it done. 21 turnovers and 4 assists. You're not beating anybody. In fairness, the Gators' strength of schedule has got to be way up there. It looks like they are at a 45. It should be way higher. There's a 7-game stretch they're on. Stanford, Gonzaga, Duke, Florida State, a good Loyola team, Cincinnati and Clemson. That's a tough stretch.
Yeah, it's only at 45, though. You look at the strength of schedule. Number
that's
one,
so
Missouri.
far. I mean, after that stretch, it will be better.
But let's go ahead and take a look at the upcoming schedule here. Salika, if I can bring you back here, if they show up on the screen. Probably the game of the week in terms of weekday games this entire week is the one coming up tomorrow night, Mississippi State on the road at Cincinnati.
Yep, that's going to continue to be played in the friendly confines of NKU's arena. But I think Cincinnati also has to be considering the other game they'll have this weekend, and that's when they actually go out to UCLA.
Yeah, but tough stretch here for Cincinnati coming off the Florida game with Mississippi State and UCLA. After that, we'll turn to the American in a second here, though. But
yeah,
David,
there's one on Wednesday I'm looking forward to, but I'll wait till we get to the American.
But since we are in the SEC portion, we would definitely be remiss if we did not highlight Middle Tennessee and Auburn, because Chad's been quite vocal about the Blue Raiders not getting top 25 votes, but it's time to see if it's going to be put up or shut up time for a team like Auburn as well.
I'm looking forward to that one.
It's interesting. Middle Tennessee, I believe, has not lost a game to an SEC opponent in 3 or 4 years now. It's a really impressive stretch they've been on here, and I think they can win this one, David, although
I think they can too. I like this Auburn team. I think they have good potential, and this isn't so much downplaying Auburn, but yeah, I think Middle Tennessee, they've proven they can play on the road in hostile environments. This one's going to be a little bit higher. This is their toughest game of the year so far, but I think they're good enough to win it. I really do.
I think that Vatech Kentucky game might be kind of interesting. And that Vatech, the way they shoot it, that might be a game. Watch out Kentucky a little bit.
Watch out Kentucky a lot a bit.
Right, with Kentucky's youth, and Virginia Tech's actually the highest scoring team in the country by 3 points. So they can score in bunches. I know as a Husky that they put up a ton of points against us. So that'll be a good one to watch. And that Middle Tennessee Auburn game is actually in Birmingham, so there could be some decent Blue Raider fan turnout at that game. Not sure how far of a drive that is.
Oh, it is in Birmingham. From Auburn, it's about equidistant. Actually, Auburn a little under 2 hours, and Murfreesboro a little over 2 hours. So
all right,
that's it'll be an Auburn. The crowd will be partial to Auburn, but it is not the same as going to the camp. I think Middle Tennessee is going to win that one. I really do.
Right, and Tytel, if you look at the last columns here with the AP and the coaches poll, we're seeing 9 different teams in the SEC getting votes this week. 4 of them actually in the top 25. Are we looking at I'm not going to say 9, but a 7 to 8 bid SEC from what you've seen so far?
I cannot take the under fast enough. You kidding me?
No way. Okay.
Ooh, man. First of all, those bids at the Big Ten and Pac-12 aren't got to go somewhere. And I think the SEC, like, if you gave me over under at 6.5 or 7, I'd be taking the over, I think.
I don't think they get more than 7 anyway.
More than 7, no, but I think it could be a 7-bid league this year. And David, I know you want to talk a little American. We spoke a little bit about Cincinnati and what they did and what they've got coming up, but I think you want to discuss another team in the American and not Wichita State either.
Yeah, I mean, Wichita State ranked 3rd. I don't think they're overrated by that much, but clearly the best team overall. But how about Houston? Houston just with the 1 loss, and they had the blowout win. Granted, it was at home against Arkansas. Another nice win, more optics than it is on paper, looking good. But, I mean, to go to St. Louis and blow them out, and it's like, wow, this team has won back-to-back games where they blew the opponents out. They have 3 games this week, 1 a bye game against Prairie View. That's inconsequential, but they go to LSU, and then they play Providence on a neutral floor. And if they pick up both of those, and then suddenly they have that many wins away from home against that caliber of team, and they only have 1 loss, don't we have to start talking about them as a serious at-large candidate? And when you look at the rest of the conference, what has Cincinnati done that they've done less than Houston? Just about everybody in the league, minus maybe Temple and Wichita, has done less than Houston, and they haven't looked as good as Houston. Houston, they've looked really good this year.
SMU's done some nice things too.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thanks, I forgot about them. But yeah,
SMU's in good shape. They beat Arizona and they beat USC. So even if USC falls apart, they can probably hang on to that Arizona win and be happy about it. I think the problem is Cincinnati's got to get that win tomorrow, and then they win at UCLA, they'll probably be in really good shape because we're starting to wrap up the non-conference now. So once conference play starts, these teams are what they did, and then they got to just go after each other. Houston, is that game this week? They're at LSU. They got to get that win, I think.
I think they do too, but I think they can.
They haven't done anything on the road yet. Yeah, so the Arkansas win looks real nice, but I know if they get on the bubble and they're coming down to, comparing teams and they're big, notch under their belt is the home win over Arkansas, but they didn't do much on the road. They're probably going to get left out. They got to get some road wins.
Yeah, they do, and I think they're going to get road wins in conference.
Yeah,
again, all the games this week minus Prairie View, LSU is on the road and Providence is neutral. I think if they get all 3 of those, they have the home win against Arkansas, and then they have at least NIT caliber wins away from home on their resume. I think that might be enough to where they've done enough out of conference to where, if they finish in the top 2 or 3 or top 3, they can get in.
Tytel, do you want to set people straight about this Houston team?
Yeah. David called them a serious at-large candidate. I say they lost to a Drexel team who's 5-5. And I understand 8-1 is great and they have some good wins, but I don't think we're at serious candidacy just yet.
Right.
Well, good.
Well, if they get the 3 wins this week.
Well, if you named a field today, they're strongly on the discussion board at least, if not maybe in at the back end.
Well, no, wait a second. They've got 8 wins. Here are their wins: McNeese State, Liberty, Wake Forest, who stinks. Incarnate Word, New Orleans. Arkansas at home, I'm going to give you that. Fairfield and St. Louis.
Yeah.
They have not beaten anybody who is a tournament team unless
They haven't.
arguably this team.
Other than Arkansas.
Winning at LSU is not going to be a huge boost. It's a lot better LSU team than we thought it would be, but it's still LSU, who was probably going to finish dead last in the SEC.
I'm rating it more on potential. I think that they're good enough to win all 3 games this week, and if they do, then you at least have to say, this team can make some noise in this conference.
Yeah, and then next week they get Providence on a neutral court, which would be another big opportunity.
And if Providence loses that game, we're going to be writing off Providence entirely.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah,
that's the problem. They're only going one way or the other, right?
Yeah.
They need Providence to win that game, so Providence is a better team, honestly.
Yeah, pick your poison.
The other notable game coming up this week is Oklahoma at Wichita State. Huge game for the Shockers, who are number 3 in the nation right now.
Yep, Wichita State has been looking more and more dominant lately, and this would probably be their stiffest test since their failure to capitalize on the Notre Dame game.
Question, is that – I know it's in Wichita. Is it at the Roundhouse or is it at the arena downtown?
My understanding, I think it's at the Roundhouse, but
that's going to be a fun one. Not that it wouldn't be fun at the arena, but yeah.
Well, I'll double-check that right now, but Matt, you had a comment first?
Yeah, I was going to say quickly for this, I think this is a monster week for Cincinnati. For 2 had hopes of being a protected seed, they've lost 2 of their first 4 chances out of the conference. I think they need both of these to have any hope of getting a good seed come March.
Just as an update, that is downtown at the Intrust Bank Arena. It is not going to be at the Roundhouse.
Okay.
Now that would make sense because Intrust Bank Arena has to host, I think, 2 or 3 different games to be eligible as a host, which they will be serving in March.
Well, Wichita's the host, so there's no motivation to not play there because they can't be placed there. So.
The Atlantic 10 Conference, I'm not that certain what we want to discuss. It's still part of this show, at least, so we'll bring it up real quickly.
St. Bonaventure has won 7 of 8 since losing their opener.
Let's give this segment to Titel here.
Yes.
Because I'm on the Jalen bandwagon and he's finally healthy. Yes, I am. And yes, he is. And yes, they're going to keep going fine. The loss to TCU by 10, neutral site is looking great. It's to an undefeated team. The opener 2-point loss. I know the entire panel doesn't give a damn about injuries, but I'm telling you, they wouldn't have lost that game if Jalen wasn't hurt. They're going to win many games. I think they're a serious at-large candidate.
What the hell? I'm with you. I said I liked them. That was why I led with them.
When they lost to Niagara, and they're like, oh, the injuries doesn't matter. Of course it matters.
I still like
upcoming week in the Atlantic 10 Conference. Here are the games. St. Bonaventure's got an interesting game on Saturday against a pretty good Vermont team. That might be the only game worth watching this week, David, though, if you look at that schedule.
Let's see what we got. Fordham going to Rutgers, a battle of 2 really bad non-under-the-radar teams. I got one, but it's Murray State. One loss Murray State going to St. Louis, but that's more because of Murray State than it is anything else. Other than that, what a craptacular week. Dayton in complete rebuilding mode.
It's not even on the screen anymore. We're going to the Mountain West. And
okay, good.
And Rocco, we unlike the A10, we may have a multi-bid Mountain West here. Maybe even 3 bids if things really shake out.
Yeah, at this point, I mean, I'm really encouraged by UNLV. I don't think they have the resume yet because they fell short in the 2 big chances at Northern Iowa and against Arizona. But they did beat Illinois, and Brandon McCoy has just been a machine in every single game. The team that's really starting to stand out a little bit is Boise State because the Loyola Chicago blowout is looking a lot better. The win at Oregon is impressive, even if Oregon ends up not being an NCAA tournament team. And so they're starting to build something there. And Nevada, clearly, if you watch them play, is a tournament team. It's just – and unfortunately, they could get bit in the butt if they lose some bad games in this conference. So hopefully they don't do that, because it would be great to see them, in those wearing white in the first round.
Yeah, and Matt, San Diego State, who was a team that we thought would be battling this year, do we have to rate them? We just mentioned this game briefly already, but do we rate them off with that Cal loss now?
Yeah, I think we'll put it the Cal Wazoo double is that's gonna be an anchor, I think, on their profile. That like short of like one or two more losses before selection Sunday, I think they're gonna need the auto. I think they'd be fairly capable of going to get it as long as they're healthy going into that tournament. But now they're in trouble.
The upcoming schedule here in the Mountain West, we do see Grand Canyon at Boise State coming up Wednesday night, the former team of the people there. Oregon at Fresno, Arizona at New Mexico. David, anything really standing out to you there? Maybe that Monday night game next week?
Boise at SMU. I'm looking forward to that one as much as any of these. Oregon at Fresno is interesting, but I don't know. I think Boise at SMU, we like this SMU team, and if Boise is – I think they get that when they go from potential tournament team to likely tournament team, in my opinion, because that's a hell of a road win.
And Titel, the final conference we're going to discuss in any detail here is the West Coast Conference. And Gonzaga, you still there despite the Villanova loss with them, especially with the bounce-back win on yesterday?
It was a great win against the horrible Washington Huskies. I mean, when you're losing to Florida in double overtime and the number one team in the country, both neutral site, you're looking great. The wins over Ohio State and Texas and Creighton, all solid. The win over Howard, couple cupcakes, and then a bad San Diego State team, and then a ton of cupcakes until they host St. Mary's on January 18th. They could only have 2 losses at that point and could be the game of the year. This is not a one-line team, but I think this is a protected seed.
Right. Well, Matt, can anybody else get in from this conference short of almost winning out if we're talking St. Mary's?
Yeah, I still think St. Mary's going to have to win the vast majority of their games. Probably like 1 to 2 more losses total. And other than that, now there's nothing else there.
There's a team I like, and it's the team that drives us crazy when they're in the picture. But I think BYU might be in the conversation.
The rest of us is even worse than St. Mary's, though.
Well, yeah, there's that. I mean, they're not without their issues, but what's their SOS? Oh, God, it is. Holy crap, is that bad?
But so for as much as we ragged at St. Mary's schedule, and rightfully so, BYU's there is even worse.
Yeah, they got a couple nuggets on their profile, though, don't they?
Well, they do have the Utah game this weekend, which will help their strength of schedule go up a little bit, but they really got to win. They have to win that one.
Yeah, I think so.
Let's go ahead and pull this down here. I want to go through a few other topics tonight here. And let's start with, we do have 7 undefeated teams: Florida State, Miami, Villanova, Georgetown, TCU, Arizona State, and Mississippi State. And I guess the question I want to throw out there is
the other one of
who's going to be the last one standing? And I do have the buzzer ready for anybody that says any team other than Georgetown. Stalika, who do you think the last team standing is going to be?
Honestly, I'm probably going to go with Villanova based on some of the teams that you just mentioned.
No, that is the correct answer. No, Villanova is the correct answer. Georgetown, I would say all they've done is prove they can beat top 300 teams. They haven't even done that. Their average opponent checks in at 311.
Well, call me after the Syracuse game in regards to Georgetown.
Right. Titel, do you agree with that? Do you agree with them? Is Villanova going to be the last team standing here, or is there a chance it could be one of the ACC teams or a TCU?
It's going to be the Miami Hurricanes based solely on schedule. I think Villanova would beat Miami 8 times out of 10 this year, but Villanova has Temple and then Butler, I believe, later this month. Miami's got 3, not cupcakes, but GW, Hawaii, and Pitt, all 3 road games. So there's certainly a chance, especially if they're looking ahead. But wait a second, I don't think everybody will.
Titel, that the Hawaii game is the first game of the Diamond Head where they could end up with Middle Tennessee or USC in a championship game. So that could be a factor there as well, couldn't it?
Good. I wish Ken Palm would list that on his schedule, but good to know.
Rocco, you want to join the Miami team? You want Team Villanova or somewhere else?
Yeah, I'm on Villanova. I think if you look at this, I do think Villanova is going to be able to beat Temple on the road. I do know that's a dangerous game because Temple always pulls off a big upset, it seems like, every year, and that just makes sense for them to win. But as long as they can escape that, I'm not as impressed with Butler, although it's a tough place to get a win. And then if they get by both of those, I mean, they could look out. They could steamroll all the way through the middle of February. I know they got to play St. John's in the Garden, and they got to play Xavier at home. But the top of the league for the road games like Providence, Seton Hall, Creighton, Xavier, those are all at the end of their schedule. So if anybody's going to make a deep run undefeated, it's going to be Villanova.
I would like to point out that Georgetown's combined opponents have a combined record of 12-62 against Div 1 teams. That's all. I will pull this down now.
Matt, you agree with what everyone else says? Probably the Villanova, Miami, or Miami.
Yeah, probably. I want to give a shot. I like that TCU team a lot, but I guess as soon as you hit Big 12 play, there'll be a couple of minefields and I don't think they're like as above it. Whereas like Villanova is probably a couple of steps above everyone in the Big East, like the next in Seton Hall.
Yeah. Actually, in terms of Big 12 play for TCU, they're going to start off with home game against Oklahoma, at Baylor, and then Kansas at home, then at Texas, at Oklahoma. It's
Good luck.
Yeah, man.
There, yeah.
They do have Texas. Of those, you'll feel like they're protected seed for them.
Oh, they do have
Texas.
Yeah,
if they win all of those, they're a 1 seed.
Let's go through the other end of things here. And David, you're an under the radar guy, so I'm going to throw this question to you. I don't know. We need to go through everybody. We have 7 winless teams: Norfolk State, Coppin State, and literally half of the SWAC: Alabama A&M, Mississippi Valley State, Alabama State, Texas Southern, and Arkansas Pine Bluff. You got to pick for me for the last winless team.
Alabama A&M.
Alabama A&M. Okay. Amazingly on that list, Texas Southern, a team that I still think is probably going to win the SWAC. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, when you go 4 years without playing an out-of-conference home game, you're going to rack up some losses.
But Tytel, got a few other questions I want to throw out to everybody here. Let me start with this one. Do you have a pick right now for who the player of the year would be?
I can't believe it because he's a rookie and he's not the rookie you think of. I have Trae Young of Oklahoma based solely on the fact that he's like the best in the nation at many, many things. Number 1 in scoring, 28.8 a game. Number 3 in assists. He's not just a bomber. He also distributes 8.8 assists a game. He also gets to the free throw line in the top 10 in the nation, over 9 attempts a game. I know his team isn't undefeated, but it ain't because of him. He's playing like the best player in the nation.
Wow. Rocco, you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yep. I think Trae Young is the player of the year right now. And if you want to talk about anybody that's not a freshman, I would give it to McCall Bridges from Nova. But I mean, Trae Young's just doing everything. He's the most remarkable player to watch. He's got all the efficiency metrics. He deserves it, and he's on a tournament level team. So.
Well, I was also going to ask both of you about freshman of the year, but I think you've already answered that. But Matt, let me throw it over to you. Either player of the year or freshman of the year. Do you disagree?
Yeah, I disagree. I have a freshman who's both, but it's actually Marvin Bagley. Like, as much as fun as Trae Young is to watch all that, I don't think Oklahoma's being a tournament team yet this year. And I'll even include USC in that because they have not looked like a tournament team. And that where Marvin Bagley, like, he was huge. And basically the entire PK 80 and that. And I think the only reason why Duke did slip up a couple of these coins that come later.
Well, let me throw another question out there, and I want to find out who you think the team of the year is, and maybe kind of add this in here, David. Who do you think the most surprising and the most disappointing teams have been so far this year?
Well, the most surprising in a good way, I guess, has been Arizona State. It's starting off unranked. I don't even think they were getting any votes. I mean, in the preseason, I don't think we had them in the field, and I don't think they were going to end up close. Here they are ranked 5th or 6th, and how can you say they don't deserve it when you look at how they've blasted 2 likely protected seeds both away from home. Well, they blasted Xavier, and they fell behind 15-3 to Kansas and proceeded to outscore them from that point on by about 25 or whatever it was. They're the surprise team of the year. The disappointment of the year, like outside of Arizona's 3 losses, but I think that was just a bad week and that they're still really good. I would say Wisconsin. And I know that one might be a little bit selfish because I was bigger on Wisconsin than you guys, but I am legitimately surprised that they have been as bad as they've been, 4-7, and at no point have they really looked good.
Oh, Stalika, would you agree with those 2 teams?
I would agree that Arizona State has been the most pleasant surprise, along with a few honorable mentions for teams like Northern Iowa and Western Kentucky. But I would have to say the biggest disappointment, and I know they're under some clouds as far as NCAA investigation goes, or not NCAA, but FBI investigation, and that's going to be USC, because they've also fallen off the tracks in the past week here.
Titel, I want to get your thoughts on that. Do you want to go USC as the more disappointing? Do you agree on the Arizona State selection there?
Yes, this is the John's enemies category. So the most surprising team, and it's not even close, is ASU for all the reasons we mentioned. On the flip side, the most disappointing to my delight, the Princeton Tigers, went undefeated in conference play last year, starting 2-6 this year. Couldn't be happier about it.
I actually think in terms of disappointing, I would rank St. Mary's up there now, just because.
Ooh, good pick. Good pick.
That was a team that probably could have been 10-0 right now, given the talent they've got, and they've been, 8-2. It's hard to say you're disappointing, but when you play a crap schedule, you've got to be better than 8-2. And Tita, let me stick with you. Do you have a pick? What do you think of the game of the year so far has been?
So this is as far under the radar as you can go, but I was minding my own business a couple weekends ago, and I flipped over to the UNC Greensboro Liberty game, and unfortunately I spent the next hour watching it, unfortunately because I had much better things to do, except it went triple overtime, and it was the performance of the year as well by Francis Alonso, the guard for the Spartans. They were down by 11 with about 5 minutes left in regulation. He banks in a 3 with 5 seconds left to send it to overtime. In double overtime, he hits a pair of threes, including another bank shot in the final 15 seconds to send it to triple overtime and makes the game-winning jumper with 2 seconds left to win the game. Performance of the year and game of the year because of him, Francis Alonso.
Matt, do you have a pick for game of the year?
Yeah, I'm going Florida Gonzaga at the PK80. That game was insane.
I'll going to give you one of the best finishes of the year, and I'm actually going to go ahead and put it up on the screen right now. In fact,
is this the one I think it is? I hope that it is.
Let's see. I may be able to get this.
Yes,
get this full screen. It's at least going to be small, but hold on a second. I'm going to pull this down again because we're not getting any sense. But we're going to try this one more time here. Let's try this one more time.
Okay.
Our technical ability, not the surprise of the year?
Right, our technical.
Huge win for Presbyterian. If you thought it looked good, it sounded even better. Hey, Ryan Clary, tell me what happened.
And Mountain comes to JC. He'll put it up. Got it! He got it! JC Younger got it! JC Younger got it! JC Younger got it! JC Younger got it! PC wins! PC wins! PC wins! The shot is going to count! The shot is going to count! He absolutely got it off! They're going to review it because the crew is great!
The crew is great. Oh, man.
Also had to enjoy the 5 or 10 Presbyterian fans storming the court and then having to walk off while they reviewed it.
That was it, Chad. That was my pick. I don't like picking the same game as you, but that one was phenomenal. If I had to go with another one that hasn't been picked, I would say the Texas Duke game, simply because of I don't know. It was what woke me up to the thinking that Texas is back. I know they don't have the wins on their profile yet, but I definitely think they're good enough to get them, and will get them by the end of the year.
Rocco, do you have a pick, or should I even ask you? Because I think it's going to be Washington, Kansas.
Yeah, that's my own personal choice. I do agree that Florida Gonzaga was the best game of the year, though. I think
I agree. Yeah.
If you're just looking for sheer entertainment, excitement, drama, that's the choice.
Actually, Titel, I think you also wanted to mention some really amazing stats from this year. So let me throw it over to you one last time here before we go to our final thoughts.
It's been amazing to see some of the stats. I know it's very early, so I'm certainly not saying that these guys are going to end up like this, but Udoka Azubuike shooting almost 80% from the field. I believe that Cassius Winston of Michigan State is shooting over 60% from behind the arc, and he's good enough he might stay up there, which I think is pushing the NCAA record. And then minutes per game, I understand it's not the sexiest category, but currently 39 minutes a game for Towson. Like, give the kid a rest already.
Well, I'll tell you what, let me run through everybody else, see if there's any other final thoughts for the evening. Matt, let me start with you.
Yeah, I think now the one I'm going to look at, because we mentioned it this week, the American. I think this is a monster week for them, where can they be a 2-3 bid league, or can they be like a 4-5 bid league, where I think there are bids available. They did Houston, Temple, big opportunity. I mean, it's a tough ask, but it'd be a huge win for them. But I think that almost could seal a bid for the bar get collapse. And then Cincinnati could be anything from a 4-5 to be the protected seed if they win their 2 games this week, and then play like they're expected the rest of the year, like the predictive metrics would suggest. But I'm looking, I think with Big 12 and there's the Big 10 and the Pac-12 being so bad this year, they're available.
Yeah, Matt, we're kind of losing you there. We're kind of breaking up here. We'll see what we can do to get back. But I do agree with what Matt was saying, that there are some bids that are opening up from conferences like the Big 10 and the Pac-12, and Mountain West might benefit from a bid. We may see a couple of the under-the-radar conferences being contention for at-large bids, like the Missouri Valley and Conference USA as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Rocco, let me turn over to you.
Yeah, so I knew Titel was digging into some individual stat leaders, so I decided to dig into some team stat leaders that are interesting. So assist-to-turnover ratio is being led by Davidson, who's got a 2.42, and there's only one other team above 2, and it's barely, and that's St. Mary's. Everybody else is down around 1.7. So that's pretty impressive the way Davidson takes care of the basketball. Number 2 is Evansville, shooting 49% from 3. That's almost 3% higher than the next best team in Division I college basketball. And number 3 is Portland State and West Virginia have a 9.5 and 9.7 for Portland State turnover margin. And the next closest to that is St. John's. So it goes to show you that Press Virginia and Portland State stealing their way of and their style of pressing is really paying off so far.
Yeah, you want to talk about team stats? I think my favorite team stat right now is 317. That is the up-to-date average KenPom rating for Georgetown's 8 opponents so far. Their 8-0 record. But Stalika, let me go to you.
We highlighted this earlier tonight, where Chicago State managed to score all of 31 points against Northwestern. It's almost 10 years to the date where St. Louis and Georgetown had one of the all-time rock fights, and that was GW winning at home against St. Louis 49-20. Let me put this into perspective. The St. Louis Cardinals just missed by 2 runs outscoring St. Louis, because there was one game in August of 2008. They scored 18 runs. You couldn't get a 3-run homer and outscore their basketball team?
Yeah. Titel, any other final thoughts from you before I go to David?
Just want to give a quick shout-out to Middle Tennessee point guard David Simmons. So they're playing a major power conference team, an in-state rival in Vandy on Wednesday, and he had to make his first career start because the normal starting guy, Tyrick Dixon, had a knee injury. All he does, he goes out there, manages the game, 30 minutes, 1 turnover, and they beat Vandy by 3, The Blue Raiders are now 7-1. Their only loss, a 6-point loss to Belmont. Bravo, David Simmons.
All right. David Griggs, you want to finish us off?
Yeah, it's just, and again, a lot of this might seem less impressive at the end of the year, depending on how things play out. But last week was a rather incredible week when it came to top 10 teams losing at home. When you look at the protected seeds, and especially from the 3 line up, it's not unusual to see the top 10 or 12 teams combined lose less than 10 home games all year long. Now, we don't know that the current top 10 is going to be the final top 10. In fact, it probably won't be. But to go back-to-back nights where we had top 10 teams not just losing at home, but losing at home to unranked teams, and then you see Kansas losing at not a home game, but in front of a very partial crowd to Washington, who was also unranked, and then losing again in a true home game this weekend to who beat them? I'm blanking.
Who?
Who beat Kansas on Saturday?
Arizona State.
Oh, Arizona State. Thank you. Yeah. That is just sort of like kind of unprecedented, historic, just the number of top 10 teams that lost at home to unranked teams or in the case of Kansas, to a ranked team. I don't recall that ever happening before.
No, it's been a great season so far, I think. I think we've got a great season ahead. Maybe not so much this week, but once we get to the weekend, things will start looking a lot better. But I guess on that note, on behalf of David Griggs, Matt Zukowski, John Titel, Rocco Miller, and John Salika, I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us. Talk to you again real soon.